It's fantastic to be here with all of you. We're looking ahead 20 years. And my one of my favorite sayings is that good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment. Last month, it's exactly 20 years since I met my wife, Heather. And over the course of these 20 years, what happens very constantly is she will from time to time ask me, where are we going to be in 5 years' time? And my reply to that is always, let's look back to where we were 5 years ago. When I was a student in London and at Cambridge in the mid-80s, would I have predicted that 5 years later I would be in the throes of starting my own business, building a brand and building a business? I may have wanted to, but would I have known definitely in 5 years I would have done that? Now let's look back 20 years and let's look at what has happened. Of course, there are the technological changes, the satellite TV and internet and smartphones, mobile phones. I mean, that's all there. That's fantastic. But actually, the more profound changes that have taken place over the last 2 or 3 decades. When I came here from India as a 19-year-old student, I came to study over here, and I remember so clearly my family and my friends in India said to me, if you decide to stay and work in Britain after you finish your studies, just remember one thing. You'll never get to the top. Because you will not be allowed to get to the top, because as a foreigner, there will be a glass ceiling. And you know, 3 decades ago, they were absolutely right. And you know, today, they are absolutely wrong. Because I've seen in front of my eyes this country, Britain, transform itself from a country with a glass ceiling to that glass ceiling being well and truly shattered to now being a meritocratic country where there's opportunity for everybody. And last week, I was very proud to be in Westminster Hall with my fellow peers and with the members of the other place, House of Commons. And we were there, and we were addressed by President Obama. And the one thing that he said that I will never forget all my life is he said, look at how we have changed. Look at what Britain and the United States enable anyone to get from anywhere to anywhere. And I stand in front of you here as the President of the United States of America. And my grandfather was a cook in the British Army in Kenya. That is the power of global meritocracy, which has happened today. And also what's happened is countries are opening up. My home country, India. When I left India, what the India I was brought up in as a child was a closed economy, inward-looking, protective, insular. Now that India, today is the 20th anniversary this year of India's liberalization in 1991, and it's a global emerging economic superpower. Just look back 20 years ago, my wife Heather is South African. I met her just after 1990 when Mandela was freed. We're in his lecture hall today. He was freed in 1990. Before that, apartheid. What an awful thing. It was just 2 decades ago. The Iron Curtain just came down, 1989. So the world has opened up, and that has happened without a doubt. But also what's happened is the power of leadership, the power of individuals being able to transform and change countries. Over here, we have had Margaret Thatcher, and one of the best things she did, I think, was to unleash the spirit of entrepreneurship in this country. I mean, let's be honest. 2, 3 decades ago, entrepreneurship conjured up images of Del Boy and second-hand car salesmen. Today, it is highly respected. Look at the way leadership has transformed countries. Singapore, a country after the war that had nothing, it still doesn't even have its own water. And that tiny country of just a few million people is one of the most successful economies in the world. I was in Dubai in March at the invitation of the government over there. Yes, they've had a massive property crash. But again, that country, that tiny little country of just a few million people is such a successful economy in spite of their property crash and has become a global hub and a regional hub. An airline, Emirates, that didn't exist a few decades ago, that is now one of the largest airlines in the world. Look at India. I, 3 years ago, took over the management and have bought the only brewery in a state called Bihar. Now, Bihar is one of the most poor states in India. It has a population of over 80 million. That's more than the population of this country. It's the third highest population in India. When I said I was going to buy a brewery in Bihar, my friends would say, "Are you mad? Bihar? I mean, that's a terrible state." And you know, it had a terrible reputation. It was known as a basket case. Today, it is a basket of opportunities. Why? Because one chief minister who's just been re-elected for a second term transformed the state through good governance. And good governance can transform even what is known as a basket case into today one of India's fastest growing economies in India, and of course the fastest growing beer rate in India as well. And when you're talking about governance, corruption in India has been, in many countries, is a huge problem. Today, the people of India are saying, we've had enough. We've had enough of scams. We've had enough of corruption. And there is a movement now to get rid of corruption. So what I've also learned is that looking ahead, you've got to be prepared for the unexpected. I don't think we over here can sit and predict the future. I'll never forget how Her Majesty, the Queen, when the financial crisis took place, saying, why didn't anyone foresee this? Why didn't anyone predict this? And the reality is people didn't. The reality is the subprime crisis in 2006 led to the credit crunch, led to the financial crisis, and then led to recessions and economic crisis, and then led from there to sovereign crisis. A domino effect that has taken place over 5 years, and nobody really, except for one or two individuals, predicted that would happen. And I remember in the middle of this crisis, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who's a fellow of my college at Cambridge, Sydney, Sussex, and he was giving this talk, and he looked up and he said, God, we know you're up there, but can't you make it a little bit more obvious sometimes? And my great-grandfather in India has been a great inspiration to me. He was an entrepreneur, philanthropist, looked after his family really well. He was a member of the equivalent of the House of Lords in India, and somebody I've never heard a bad word said about. And I always say to my family, so what was the secret of great-grandfather's success? Oh, he was a man of great foresight. What does that mean? What is a man of great foresight? And here we are, people can't even predict what's going to happen. And then I was told, throughout my childhood, you're useless at art. You're not creative. You may be good at your studies, stick to that. And I've realized more and more that in business, starting a business, the biggest strength that you need is to be creative. And I think also that where governments are concerned, looking ahead, look at our government over here. The move the coalition government has made, the cuts, the defense review. My gosh, a strategic defense review. First one in many years. The last one took 1 year. This one was done in 3 months. And in the debate last autumn, I remember so clearly saying, you are doing a defense review based on what's happened in Iraq and what's happening in Afghanistan. You do not know what's going to happen next. Do not cut without thinking ahead. Expect the unexpected. And what has happened? Libya. And what do we need? An aircraft carrier with planes. And what do we not have? We have aircraft carriers with no planes. We've got rid of our Harriers. We need our nuclear submarines, but we've got rid of our Nimrods with no AWAC cover. And this was just a few months ago. The unexpected happened, and our government has been caught with its pants down. So, immigration cuts. Oh, immigration's too high. Cut. Yes, there are too many illegal immigrants. But look at the immigrants who are enriching this country. Look at the higher education sector. Right here at Oxford and at Cambridge, 30% of our academics are foreign. Across the board, 10% of our students are foreign. £8 billion of revenue. The links between countries. No, immigration cut. Doesn't make sense to me. Look at the higher education cuts. This is one of our greatest competitive advantages in our country. And we cut funding to higher education. And then what do? We triple the fees of students to make up for that cut. Insane. Well, that's looking ahead for you. And then we have a deputy prime minister who likes alternative vote reform. Well, we saw what happened there. 2/3 of the country rejected it. And now, of course, he wants another reform. House of Lords. Reform it. Change it. 800 years of history. Change it. Okay, how many of you here think that the House of Lords should be elected? Any hands? I can't see you. A few hands? Okay, well, you know the ones who didn't put up your hands? You want to reform 800 years of history and constitution. This country doesn't have a written constitution. The House of Lords is like the guardian of the nation. We are a check and a balance. We scrutinize, we question government. But we're not elected. We're appointed. And my colleagues, I'm inspired every single time I go in there. We have the most famous, learned scientists, journalists, authors, business people, judges, you name it, the best in the world. Would any of them stand for election? Most of them wouldn't stand for election. They're independent-minded, they will vote against their own parties, and I'm so proud of the work that the House of Lords does. And suddenly you make it elected? Oh, suddenly we'll all be saying, well, we're just as powerful as the House of Commons. One of us wants to be Prime Minister now. Can't stop that. And so we'll have this clash, which is going to be absolutely crazy, and they're saying, oh, the conventions will stay the same. Looking ahead, thinking things through, well, I believe the lesson I've learned is it's evolution, not revolution. Well, with business, on the other hand, it ain't broke, don't fix it, doesn't apply. I believe in business. It's constant, restless, non-stop innovation. I believe you don't have to create something that never existed before. In my own business, I came up with the idea of Cobra beer when I was a student. I hated fizzy lagers. I loved Indian food, and I loved real ales, English ale. And I found fizzy lagers didn't go well with Indian food, very uncomfortable. And I found ales didn't go well with Indian food either. They were too heavy, and they were too bitter. And I thought, what do we do about this? A restaurant owner could be selling me more beer and more food. And then I came up with the idea, why don't I produce my own beer that has the refreshing qualities of a lager and the smoothness and drinkability of an ale combined? So, how much simpler can you get than that? Why didn't anyone think of that before? I mean, the beer industry, it's unlike the internet industry, which is just a couple of decades old, if that. The beer industry, it's millennia old. Stella Artois was founded in the 14th century. But this is the beauty of innovation, is I think that looking ahead, people will come up with ideas and people will say, why didn't somebody think of that before? And that will happen on and on and on. And it's about doing something different, doing something better, and changing the marketplace forever. And my mission from the beginning was to brew the finest ever Indian beer and make it a global beer brand. But that mission is a journey. And I learned very quickly that in business, success is not a destination. Success is a journey. And it's a damn difficult journey. And it's ups and downs, and it's obstacles, and you've got to get through, and you've got to adapt, or you die. 2 years ago, I nearly lost everything. 20 years of blood, sweat, and tears nearly went down the drain. I was hit by the financial crisis. I was hit by a hedge fund that wanted us to sell our business, and we had to put our business up for sale. And then you saw the behavior of people under pressure, the bankers, the hedge funds, the advisors, the behavior that I couldn't even start to describe. And what got us through that was we stuck our course, and we believed in our brand. We believed in our team. And luckily, we found a company called Molson Coors, one of the largest brewers in the world, the largest family-owned brewers in the world, who said, we don't want to buy you, we want to do a joint venture with you. And this is why we want to do a joint venture with you, because we believe in you and your team, and we believe in your brand being an extraordinary brand. And I realized then, through the most trying circumstances, we got that deal through, and we survived, because the culture of Molson Coors, the ethics, the values built up over centuries was very similar to our own entrepreneurial culture. And the match of those is why we got the deal through, and why, in the words of my colleague David Putnam, Lord Putnam of Chariots of Fire fame, who said, Karan, you've done your joint venture, it'll fail, unless the cultures are similar and they work. And 2 years down the road, I'm really proud to say that the joint venture is a huge success, thanks to those cultures working. And in the most trying circumstances of restructuring my company, I'm looking after everybody from my employees to my shareholders to settling my creditors, which has not been done in the history of this country before, because I believe it's the right thing to do. Talking about India, it despairs. I mean, I'm not going to ask you to do this, but when I ask business audiences around the country, how many of you do business with India? To this day, out of hundreds of people, a few hands go up. You know, we do more business, Britain, exporting to Ireland than we do to Brazil, Russia, India, and China combined. And what's happening here? Why aren't we going global? Opportunity India. Yes, it's a country with huge problems. Yes, it's got 300 million people who live on less than $1 a day. There's a huge amount of work to be done. but it's got 300 million people in the middle classes growing and millions of people being uplifted from poverty year after year. It's a huge marketplace in itself. It's not about outsourcing, it's about right sourcing if you want to do that. But it's also participating in India. The High Commissioner of India put it really well. He said, our growth is your opportunity. Why aren't we making more of that opportunity? And I think we should. That old saying of go west, young man, today it's go east, young man and woman. So the opportunity is absolutely fantastic. And I was sharing the platform with a really bright, one of India's most successful authors. He's a really young guy, and he sold millions and millions of books called Chetan Bhagat. And he said, people, young Indians in India, the youngsters want two things more than anything else. They want the politics of similarity and not the politics of difference. British government, listen to that, please. And they want education more than anything else. And I will tell you about a story of a young boy in India, in the southern state of Kerala. This boy couldn't afford to go to school. His brother got his place in school 15 kilometers away. He walked with his brother to the school. He followed him. The brother would go inside the school, and the brother would pass the textbooks out of the class, the school hut window, and this young boy would read his brother's textbook sitting outside the class because he couldn't get a place in that classroom. He was so ambitious. He studied, he learnt, he ended up getting to the London School of Economics, he ended up joining the Indian Foreign Service. Oh, I didn't mention he was an untouchable, the Dalits. He ended up becoming the first Dalit president of India, President Narayana. That is the power of getting from anywhere to anywhere. And I think that here in this country, we take so much for granted. We spend 50% of our GDP on public services. Free roof over our heads if we need it. Unemployment benefit if we need it. Disability benefit if we need it. Free health at the point of purchase. Free school education. We've got it all. We are so wealthy we don't have our empire anymore. What other countries would give for this? And we're just 60 million people. And 2050, forget 20 years from now, when India and China will be the two largest economies in the world, I will bet this little country will still be one of the 10 largest economies in the world. That is the power of centuries of tradition and institutions that make us so powerful. Our manufacturing industry, people say, is dead. People ask me, what do I do at Cobra Bear? First and foremost, I'm a manufacturer. We are one of the 6 or 7 largest manufacturers in the world, and it still makes up 15% of our GDP. And we've got to keep building our manufacturing strength. So I'm going to conclude by saying that looking to the future, the most important thing is attitude. Because I believe that inspiration through good leadership, through achievement, creates aspiration, and aspiration creates achievement, and that achievement creates inspiration, which creates aspiration, and it's a virtuous circle. And if there's one thing that we can do, global meritocracy, education, excellence, innovation, attitude, entrepreneurship, culture, values, dealing with the unexpected. Our vision at Cobra is to aspire and achieve against all odds with integrity. And that's a definition of entrepreneurship if you think about it. You come up with an idea, you want to get somewhere with that idea, you've invariably got little or no means, you've invariably got all the odds stacked against you, and you go out there and you make it happen. And you do it with integrity. Thank you very much. Great to meet you.